All right. Good morning, everyone. It's once again, it's Alexander and Kara here to talk to you about comics. And this theme this week is because of everything that is going on right now in America, we are going to talk about Black Lives Matter, and we're going to talk about comics that will help you get better educated on some of the issues that are coming up, so you can start to really dig into the truth of the matter. And a few that are just there for representation, there to show kids of color that they can and should and absolutely do have normal lives, and they don't need to be othered, which is something that we talk about a lot at the library, especially when we're trying to create a welcoming environment. So I believe Kara's going to go first with I Am Alfonzo Jones.
Yes. So this is I Am Alfonzo Jones, and it is about, as you can probably guess, Alfonzo Jones. He is a 15-year-old bike messenger. He goes to private school. He's a band kid, and in his class, they are in his drama class. They're reading Hamlet. So it kind of starts off with like them talking about the beginning of Hamlet, with Hamlet's father appearing to him as a ghost, and that kind of sets the stage for this story because while he is shopping for his first suit with his friend, he is shot and killed by an off-duty police officer who basically mistakes the hanger he's holding for a gun. And we don't really see much about the actual scene of the crime to begin with. We just kind of see him shopping, and then he suddenly wakes up in the afterlife. And he's on a subway car with other Black Americans who have been wrongfully killed, some by police, some in other ways. And, you know, they tell him that he's died, and then he kind of goes back and to his past to see sort of like his family. So we see the background of his dad, who was sent to prison when he was just a baby for a crime that he didn't commit, and he's been there for Alfonso's entire life. And we see, you know, how his mom struggled to get him into private school so that he could have opportunities. And then we also go to the present and see the aftermath of his death and the grief that his family are going through, the questions they have about why did this happen. And also there are these protests that rise up around New York in response to this. And this is just a really, really good current story to read right now, even though it was written before everything happened with George Floyd. It really does mirror the discourse that's going on right now. And if you're at all struggling to like really process things, it's really a good story to help you. It just draws everything in together to help you process this kind of event. Especially
the idea that he goes from holding a hanger to immediately waking up on the subway car, unable to process. Yeah, I mean, Breonna Taylor's 3 murders have not been arrested yet.
Right.
But it's and Tamir Rice was an almost immediately parallel situation as well.
Right. Yeah, and this was something that was happening obviously a lot before now. So it's almost like chilling the way that this book mirrors what's going on right now.
Let's certainly hope it no longer mirrors.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that we can start to see some change.
So the next one we're going to talk about is meant for about middle school grade. It's called The Breakaways. And it's about a young girl. She just starts middle school and joins a soccer team because a popular girl encourages her to. Now, full disclosure, I haven't read this one in a while. I read this one when it came out, And I really liked the humor of it because of the way this team, but especially like it really parallels the generation of kids that I deal with on a regular basis. They are so good at making fun of themselves. This is the bad soccer team. They're the C level. They have no hopes of winning. There's only one member of the team that really thinks that she should be on the upper level. The rest are just like, oh yeah, we're bad. We're really, really bad at this. But what I like is it really is just how to get through middle school when everything is confusing. Literally everything is confusing, whether it's coming to terms of being singled out by teachers for being a kid of color, or having gender dysphoria, or simply being bad at soccer. What I like is that this is, you look at all the different tones on the cover, and if you go through here, the team is extremely multicultural, and what it does is it normalizes like the fact that middle school is a nightmare. We are all trying to get through it. Certain issues make it harder than others. So if you are questioning your gender, or if you do feel singled out because your skin tone is different than the popular kids, it adds this level of difficulty. But what I like about books like this is, yeah, it normalizes the humor of it. It normalizes, this is one way to talk about it. This is one way to get through it. And it normalizes being really bad at sports, which I needed when I was a kid because I was a very mediocre shortstop and pitcher. But it's something that we talk about a lot. A word that you're going to hear a lot from librarians, especially white librarians, is representation and othering. And it's something that I remember in The New Kid, which we talked about last time. There's a very well-meaning woke white teacher that keeps singling out the main character to try to talk about Black issues when he just wants to draw. He doesn't even necessarily care about the school. He doesn't want to do that stuff. He's tired of being singled out for all these things. He just wants to be a regular kid and not have like this kind of target on his back, like, I can be an educational tool for the other kids in the class type of thing. And I really appreciated that got pointed out too, is that like at some point you just don't want to be a normal kid too, like, and have the normal life that everyone else has. Wouldn't that be a neat thing? But,
yeah, that would be nice.
And that's hopefully what we're going to start to see change. So kids don't have to worry about some of the extra things that they have to worry about.
Right. But kids and teens have enough to worry about already.
Yeah, it's already a really ridiculously difficult age. Let's not make it any harder on them, guys.
Yeah, I'm always blown away by like our teen volunteers and all of the extracurriculars they do. You know, in addition to volunteering at the library. And
they're hilarious kids too. That's right. One thing. Their sense of humor is much closer to mine than my own generation.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the next one.
All right. I was pretty excited about this one. This is Victor LaValle's Destroyer. And so Victor LaValle, he is known also for writing The Changeling. And this is both a retelling and a continuation of the Frankenstein story. And I am a huge Frankenstein fan, but as you can see from the cover, this one also features Black characters. And the main character here is Josephine Baker. She is Victor Frankenstein's descendant, and a brilliant scientist who is mainly responsible for the world's current advancements. So she like invented these, well, like kind of these VR kind of goggles, and people, the agents in the story, they use that to communicate with the director. So it's kind of funny because they're like sitting in their car, like looking like they're doing VR, and they're on like a conference call, and people are walking by and looking at them like, what are you doing? So there's some interesting technology in here, and it's sort of like a futuristic, sort of dystopian type world, not too far in the future though. And the story really begins with the monster, and he has basically like taken over this whaling ship and then uses it to get into America and starts this rampage. So the director of this lab where Josephine used to work, she sends her agents out to find Josephine, but Josephine doesn't really want to come back because she's had like some bad history with the director. She was forced to leave after she got pregnant. And then since that time, her son was shot and killed by police. And she sort of used this experimental technology to revive him into sort of like a Kid Frankenstein type character. So the agents, who are, by the way, named Byron and Shelley, so if you're a fan of Frankenstein, then there's like that humor in there for you. They come after her, but they kind of end up joining her in her crusade against the director as well. So this explores a lot of the inequalities that Josephine faces as both a Black American and a Black woman. And kind of feeds in, and that kind of feeds into a lot of her anger that piled on to her anger over her son's death. And it's just a really, really nice modern kind of retelling of Frankenstein, if you're also a fan of the Frankenstein story, as well as, I lost my train of thought. I'm looking at it actually. The art in this, I was just blown away by it. The art is completely gorgeous. This is definitely one I would recommend to read. And I like to see more of I would like to see more of this like sci-fi fantasy featuring Black characters as well. We really don't get a lot of that.
I especially like the notion that Josephine Baker, being responsible for an entire civilization's scientific advancement, still treated like absolute trash because of the color of being Black in America. Yep. That sounds about right. Okay, so our next one, this one is endlessly fun, and it's a series called The Kesey Tales of Mischief. What I really like about this, and the reason I suggest this to pretty much any kid that comes into River Park, is that it's short stories. They're like little cartoon episodes, and it's just about the mischief you get into being a precocious kid. And I really appreciate it's got this like kid weirdness to it. The best parallel, when I read this, I think about, from my era, Adventures of Pete and Pete, where it's that idea that through the eyes of a kid, the most mundane parts of the world are seen as like exciting and weird, and like they're just discovering how adults work with each other, and they're still trying to figure out why we wear dark socks and sandals. And you know, it was like, if you've ever watched The Sandlot, how they have these mythic stories about the creepy neighbor or the dangerous dog and all that stuff. Like everything for a kid's life is mythic until it becomes just mundane and normal. But what I like about Kesey is she's just always causing mischief. She kicks the soccer ball so hard it goes into the neighbor's lawn and she has to go get it, or like a cat steals her food. But what I like about this is, especially for my struggling readers, or my readers that are, you know, like, you got to read for 15 minutes before you do anything else. Giving them stuff like this always helps because it's short little bits to digest. So they get beginning, middle, end. Every time, beginning, middle, end of a story. And they can get through 3 of them by the time their 15 minutes is up. And the hope is that then they keep going for a half hour before they even knew it. And then you can tell them you told them so. But there are 3 books in this series. I really, really like it. It gives a really nice picture too, because it takes place in the Ivory Coast, so it's the African diaspora, or and Africa itself. But what I like then is it gives every kid I give it to a little bit of education, in that, like, when you see that she has a dark skin tone, you have an idea in your head about how she's supposed to act, and you have an idea in your head about what her life is going to be like. And then you read this book and you're given a completely different dose. You're given a completely different perspective. So you can start to break that implicit bias. You can start to look at, like, in your brain, be like, wait, that's BS. And then see, like, this is just yet another flavor of story, and that's the whole point of these books, is that you get to see another flavor of story, that there's always more beyond that first implicit thought. So yeah, instead when you look at this and you think like, oh, this is going to be issue oriented, and instead you identify with every single story of it and you laugh your little behind off, then done my job. Gotten you to see a different perspective.
This is just like a pretty great description for it too. The adventures of a young West African girl who is always getting into trouble. Like, why would you want to read that?
She thinks of herself as an adventurer, but it's not adventures like Tantan or anything like that. Like it's just her neighborhood. So it's a little more akin to, I guess, like Dennis the Menace is probably one of the older ones. Right. Even a little wimpy kiddish. Just it's regular life, but through the lens of a little kid. So I really dig this one. It's nice to give to kids, and it's what I also like is they're thick. So kids aren't going to be done with it in an hour and need to come back and get 7 more books. They can. This one might last them a couple hours, which I really dig. But so I think that wraps up this comics chat. One thing we want to note. In August, we haven't set a date or time yet, but we're looking at it. We would like to do a live comic discussion. If any of you watching would like to join us, keep in mind, we do these for all ages. So if you have any books you'd like to discuss, comment on them under this video, but please keep it as PG-13 as you can. As much as we love Saga, I know that there are some 9 and 10-year-olds that watch this stuff. So, yeah, maybe Vertigo and Image.
Family friendly, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we can stick to, I mean, the comics code was, censorship, but I'm a kid's librarian, so I still have to keep in mind these things. So if you want to talk about Raina Telgemeier, I am game for that. But, yeah.
Not to say that we can't. There are some adult comics out there that would be appropriate for anyone to join in on.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So leave us some comments about what you'd like to read, and we might put out like a survey also later with some suggestions. Just keep your eyes open for that comic discussion.
Yep. All right. As always, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you in a couple weeks. I believe our next topic is going to be LGBTQ Pride, because we are still in June. So yeah, see you next time.
All right. See you next time, guys.